So we're getting closer and closer to seeing Batman in the DCU. And with James Gunn saying he has a short list of actors in mind, we're seeing fan casts for the Caped Crusader all over the place. Now, I've been on record for being a merge bro in the past, wanting Robert Pattinson's The Batman to join the DCU, but that's not to say I'm completely against the idea of someone else playing the Dark Knight. There have been some incredible actors to play Batman in the past, and so I'd be really excited to see the mantle get passed on to someone different and see what they could bring to the role. So today, I went through and collected over 20 different names from across the internet that fans think could be the next Batman, and I'm gonna rank them. I've also thrown in a few of my own picks that I haven't really seen get much conversation, including one actor who's actually my #1 choice. He's kind of an unknown, but he has a lot of potential and could use this opportunity to prove himself as a performer. And his name is Ritchson. I don't know, guys. I really think we should give him a chance. This video is brought to you by Opera. Opera is a fast, customizable web browser built to make multitasking easier. I'm a chronically online person. It's very much a problem and something that I'm working on. But when I'm online, especially when working on videos, I want my browsing experience to be as smooth as possible. The biggest feature that I love is tab islands. You can group tabs together by project or theme and collapse and expand them whenever you want. I kind of bounce around different projects a lot and work on like 3 videos at a time, and so this helps me not lose track of anything. There's also a split screen function. I just have to drag one tab down and my entire screen splits, so I don't have to keep switching back and forth between reading comics and taking my notes. No need for multiple browser windows. If you're someone who likes to have 50 tabs open, tab traces is a really subtle but cool way to help you keep track of what you were just doing. The darker the underscore, the more recently you visited the tab, so there's no way to get lost in all your tabs. They have customizable animated themes. I love the colors and the music of the Aurora one, and I really like the floating music player. I can choose between the 7 streaming services available and detach it and control music without interrupting my work, and even use it outside the browser. And the same goes for videos. Thanks to the video pop-out feature, I can detach it and move it around the screen and outside the browser as well, so I can keep working on my notes while watching a video. Opera is completely free to use, so give it a try using the link down below and see how much smoother your online life feels. Thanks to Opera for sponsoring this video, and thanks to my patrons and channel members who help make these videos possible for just $1 a month. Now, normally on this channel, I have kind of a reluctance to cover Fancasts. Not only does it just date the video horrendously, like if you're watching this in a year and we've already cast Batman, what are you fucking doing here? But I also think a lot of Fancasts are so very visual, if that makes sense, and they're very surface level. Not everybody, of course. I've always loved David Cornswood as Superman. I've always thought he'd be perfect for the role, and he was. But a lot of other ones I see usually come down to like, is it a guy with dark hair, or has he played somebody similar to a role in the past? We forget that we're not actually casting directors. We don't know unknown actors that come through the door. We don't know how somebody's going to interact with the actual story that's being told, or with the director, or with anything like that. And so inherently Fancasts are really just based on looks, and it's hard to make a video out of that, especially when we really don't know the direction of Batman in the DCU yet. We're still not really getting a ton of answers. And I think it just kind of creates this like echo chamber almost, and it leads to the same like 5 to 10 names always being repeated for years until we get a casting, and then people get let down by the casting because it's not the person that they wanted. But I'm going to put those issues aside for a minute because it makes good content. But there are a lot of names to get through, so let's just get started, starting with Robert Pattinson. Now, I got kind of a lot of flack in my last video because I talked about how I am a merge bro. That's what we call ourselves now. And this is a conversation that I think is a little bit big. It's a bigger conversation to have in just kind of one section of a video. That was literally just a 2-minute section talking about the release date of Man of Tomorrow. It's a thought experiment. I think if you give it some thought, give it some imagination, and like genuinely think about how to make this work in a way that works, I think it's possible. I really genuinely do. And that's something I want to cover in another video. And I know I kind of feel like the guy from Dexter. I feel like Dokes right now, but like, can't prove it. I can't prove it. I can't prove it. And that's all I'll say on it for now. But let's move on to another version of Batman. Let's move on to some other names that I see get thrown around, starting with some kind of the bigger, more like Hollywood celebrity names that I always see. First one is Jon Hamm. Now, Jon Hamm is someone that like I would see get thrown around for Batman a lot back in kind of like the 2014, 2015 era before Ben Affleck was cast. Not so much nowadays for this new one, but I definitely think that it's still like, he's still kind of in the talks. And I think he's an incredible actor. He's mostly been doing comedy stuff lately, and he's a really good comedic actor. But a lot of people forget he's a fantastic dramatic actor too. Madman is incredible, and he's great in that series. And same with something like Baby Driver, which like has a lot of problematic people in it, not gonna lie. But like aside from that, and so I wouldn't hate to see him as Batman. I definitely think if you are gonna go with an older, more experienced Batman, he'd be a great pick. And so I think I'm gonna put him in, let's say B tier for now. The next up is Glenn Powell. I've seen his name thrown around quite a bit for a lot of characters in the DCU. Not so much for Batman. I see a couple people say it. I like Glenn Powell a lot. I really love him. He's probably one of my favorite people working in the industry right now. I think we are lacking in movie stars who are willing to like get a little fucked up for the roles. Like, he's not just a Ryan Reynolds. He can be a little little funky. He can get dirty. That's a type of actor that we haven't had in a while. And it's always good to see him in anything. I love him. And I'm really excited for Edgar Wright's Running Man coming out in November. I really hope that's good. Oh, I hope that doesn't age poorly. But with Glenn, I feel like he's a little too like funny. And maybe it's just because like I've seen Scream Queens and Chad Radwell is like the funniest character ever. And so I'd much prefer him as someone like a Booster Gold type. But Booster Gold, that's another fan. I see a lot of fan casts for that one too. And we'll talk about like the direction of this Batman in a bit. And so as much as I like him, I think I'm gonna put him in like a D, maybe a C tier. I'll keep him in C tier. How about that? The next big actor that I see a lot is Jake Gyllenhaal. I think if you're gonna do like a big A-list actor, like a big like household name, Jake Gyllenhaal is a really good pick actually, because he's not only like just a good actor in general, he can play crazy if you've seen like Nightcrawler and stuff, but you could kind of dive back into the sort of like the Donnie Darko roots of him and kind of like an evolution of that character. I think that could be really interesting for Batman. I think my biggest issue is he's such a big name, so I might put him in C tier just because of that. And I think this kind of comes down to like, do we want a Hollywood-esque like A-lister for this character? That's kind of what Ben Affleck was, right? I think he's actually a good casting. I think he could have been great if he was given better material. Let's not bring him back though. I don't really need to see that. But do we want someone who is like an A-lister, or do we want someone who's like more like a B and C tier, or do we want like a complete unknown? You know, sorry, not Timothée Chalamet. Next kind of A-lister is Austin Butler. I see his name get thrown around kind of a lot for a lot of different comic book roles. Whether or not he wants to be a superhero, that's the other thing too, right? I'm sure if the check is big enough, then yeah, probably. But you know, creatively, is that something they want, you know? Because sometimes superhero movies can kind of kill careers and stuff. We've seen it a couple times. I think Austin's a great actor. I don't personally see him for Batman, and so I think I'll put him either high D tier or low C. Put him in the D to make this a little bit more even. Maybe it's like the fact that the Elvis voice hasn't left him yet, but I'm having a hard time kind of picturing as Batman. But I really do want a Batman that says like, mama, please, mama, please don't die in Crime Alley, mama. I don't know. I think there's like some potential there. The next actor who's kind of a bigger name, but a little bit lesser known, is Josh Hartnett. I think he's a great actor. I'm not hugely familiar with a ton of his stuff, weirdly, but every time I've seen him, I've always liked him and enjoyed him. I am a huge fan of Trap. I think he was great in that movie. And I think he has a lot of range as an actor. I think he could do a lot of really fun stuff as Batman. I would not be opposed to him. I think he could do a great job. So I think I might make him our first A tier of the day. And in a similar boat is Lee Pace. Again, I haven't seen him in a ton of stuff, but when I do see him, I always really enjoy him. Like, I really like him in Bodies. You're kind of gonna learn that I have kind of some weird movie tastes. And he's one of those actors that can clearly be like a leading man without sort of overshadowing the rest of the role, you know? And so I think I'll put him alongside Josh in the A tier. I guess the question kind of comes down to like, how old do we want to go with this character? Not that these actors are old by any means, but there was sort of an expectation that like, if you're gonna do Damien, which is apparently what Brave and the Bold's gonna be about, you maybe want to skew older, but you don't want to go too much older than Cornswood, because you still want to keep that kind of fraternal, like contemporary vibe between the two of them. And the next actor is Chris Pratt. Yeah, no, I think I'm good. Okay, the next kind of A-lister, this was one I saw getting thrown around a little bit ago, and I think it's kind of died down now, but like I do want to talk about it, and that's Henry Cavill. I don't know. I don't get it. I think, listen, I got nothing personal against the guy or anything. I just don't know if he's got that range, right? He's fine in Witcher. He's pretty good in Witcher. But he's not in that anymore because he left to be Superman, and then they fired him from Superman. I feel bad for him in that respect. And I think he has potential as like a sort of fun actor. I saw The Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare, and that was a pretty fun movie. He was really fun in that. It was very much just like killing Nazis, but he was just silly and like goofy in it. And so like he has potential as an actor, but I don't know if he's this really, you know? And so it definitely could work, but it might be a little bit too meta for me. So I'm going to put it in kind of a low D tier. In canon, Bruce Wayne and Superman looks similar, and so like you could do a thing where like they switch places and stuff. So if anything, if you're gonna pull from another Superman actor, you could do Tyler Hoechlin. I think he was great on Superman and Lois. He said that he wants to play the role a couple times. I haven't seen Teen Wolf. It's very much my kind of show. It's right up my alley. My only concern is I've never seen him in like a big role before. I've never seen him in a movie. I've never seen him as like I've seen him on the CW. I've seen, you know, like there's CW acting, and then there's movie acting, right? And someone like Grant Gustin, I could see making that transition. I'm just not sure about Hoechlin, but I definitely think there's potential with him. But that's not to say he can't prove himself, and so I'm going to put him in the B tier. And if you really want to go with Superman and Batman look the same, you could always cast David Corenswet. Like, he's perfect for Superman. Maybe he's good for Batman too, you know, you never know. I'm kidding, by the way. That was a bit. Some people don't realize when I do jokes, and it's very upsetting to me. But all right, I want to take a little bit of an intermission from the Fancast and talk about the director for this movie. Originally, Brave and the Bold was going to be directed by Andy Muschietti, of such fame as the It movies and Mama, and unfortunately, The Flash. It's not really clear if he's attached anymore. I don't think we've had any confirmation. I don't think we'll have confirmation until the script's done. But I'm going to be honest, after The Flash, I don't think there's any way. There's no fucking way that he directs this movie. And so I'm going to put him in the D tier just because the likelihood is not that much. But that's kind of a bummer. I do think he can be a really good director. I think the It movies, Chapter 2 is a little bit wonky, but I think for the most part, they're really good. They're very enjoyable. Mama is very fun. And I like the thought of having a traditional horror director doing a Batman movie. The comic book space is littered with horror directors who come in and take over a superhero movie, and they do a great job with it. I'm talking like Sam Raimi for the Spider-Man movies, James Wan with Aquaman, David Sandberg for Shazam. Horror is always a genre that like lets directors flex a little bit. And then they come in and do the big budget thing and they bring in some of their talent there. Especially with Batman, where if you're doing like a supernatural Batman, if you're doing stuff like Man-Bat, if you're doing stuff like Killer Croc, you want to make it a little scary. You want Batman to be scary. Like, that's my favorite scene of Batman Begins, when he's like stealthily taking out those guys in that warehouse. And so in terms of other directors besides Machete, someone like Fede Alvarez could be really interesting. I have not seen Alien Resurrection yet, but I have seen the first Don't Breathe and his Evil Dead remake. And the guy is a freak. I don't know how else to say it. The man is disgusting. I don't know how willing he'd be to reel that back in, so I think I'm gonna put him in the B tier. On the topic of horror directors that make the switch to superheroes, could be Sam Raimi. Sam Raimi Batman could be so fucking cool. So yeah, that's going in the S tier. There are some Spider-Man fans that will tell you the Raimi movies are trash or whatever, but honestly, those things are revolutionary and they defined the comic book movie genre. And Multiverse of Madness, despite some of my weird flukes with it and my weird problems, it rips. It's got so much sauce. It's got so much sauce, it frankly doesn't have a ton of meat to it, but I don't care because I love the sauce. A name that I don't really see get thrown around a lot for this movie, but like would honestly make sense, is James Watkins. He's currently directing Clayface right now, so he's already sort of building the Batman universe in the DCU. And also he's a really talented director after Speak No Evil. Like, I could totally see Clayface kind of being like an audition process to see if he could do Batman solo. And so I think I'm gonna put him in the A tier or maybe the B tier. I'll keep him in the B tier for now. Someone who I'd really like to see, because frankly he's just gotten fucked over so many times by comic book movies, and that's Edgar Wright. I'm a big fan of all his movies basically, and I think that Marvel like really fucked up by not letting him make his Ant-Man movie. So you know what, DC, come take him in, let him make a Batman movie. I'm not sure how willing he'd be to do that, or if he's necessarily the right pick for Batman specifically, but I just really like Edgar Wright, so I'm gonna put him in the A tier. I'm sorry. One of the things that I think we should put to bed about Brave and the Bold, about DCU Batman, is that while Robert Pattinson's Batman is the dark and gritty Batman, DCU Batman would be the bright and colorful and funny Batman, like we've seen in something like Adam West, or the recent Mark Waid and Dan Mora World's Finest comic, or the cartoon called Batman Brave and the Bold. I feel like that's where a lot of people are getting that from. As much as I would love to see that, I don't think that's gonna be the case. James Gunn has kind of said pretty clearly that Batman's not gonna be that in this universe. Batman is still gonna be sort of dark, sort of serious, maybe a little bit more fun, a little bit more supernatural, but like it's not really gonna be that bright, colorful, silly Batman. And if we're gonna have two like dark, serious Batmen, just make it the same guy, you know? I don't know. And lastly, honestly, it might be James Gunn directing this movie. I don't know. It's such a big, like, important thing for the DCU. I can't imagine he lets someone else take the reins, unless if you've got like a really heavy name, you know? He's not my first pick compared to Superman, who I always thought he'd be a great pick for, and turns out was right. Superman was really good. But I definitely think, given how important something like Batman is to the DCU, that just feels kind of like the safest pick, you know? I'm just not sure if Batman really matches his style and like the stories that he likes to tell, so I'm gonna put him in, I'll put him in the B tier with everybody else. Okay. Now let's move on to the names that I see all the fucking time. These are like the 5 names. Anytime you ask anybody, they're gonna say at least one of these 5 fucking names. Starting with Theo James. Theo James is an actor that I like quite a bit. I've been following him since Don't Make Fun of Me, the Divergent movies. Cause again, Don't Make Fun of Me, I read the book. Don't Make Fun. The YA dystopian apocalypse romance novel, that was a whole genre and stuff. I'm not letting that movie color how I view him as an actor, because I've seen him more recently in something like The Monkey, where he plays 2 of himself, and he's great in both those roles. So honestly, yeah, I kind of like him for this. Weirdly, 2025 was like the year to be an actor playing a double role. We got Mickey 17, we got Sinners, we got The Monkey, Superman counts too. 2025, the year of the clone, baby. The next name is the name that I don't know how this got thrown into conversation, and that's Alan Ritchson. I don't love it, but I don't hate it, honestly. I've been a fan of his for a long time, and, you know, seeing his growth from something like Smallville to Titans to Reacher, I think he's actually a very talented actor, and he has a lot of potential, and he could bring something interesting to Batman. And I think especially if you want to differentiate from Robert Pattinson, you could take a lot of the aesthetics from Absolute Batman. Pardon my French, this guy's fucking huge. He plays Reacher for a reason, a character who the entire purpose of it is to say, hey, look, this guy is the coolest and biggest and strongest man of all time. And isn't that fun? And I'm like, yeah, Yeah, it's pretty fun. I love Reacher. It's pure dad slop, but I love it. Like, he talks like Raphael, which, you know, because he voiced Raphael, that would do it. So I don't know for him as kind of like the upper class, like billionaire Bruce Wayne angle, but like I think it could be really fun. So I'm gonna put him a little bit higher than most people probably would, but still not my favorite by any means. You know, there's like the blonde hair problem. Just dye his hair. I feel like people think about hair color a little bit too much. Wigs exist, you guys.
Wig, did you just say wig? Yes. I know, wig.
In kind of a similar boat, someone who I see get mentioned a lot in these Fancasts is Jensen Ackles. Now, Jensen has been a pick for Batman for kind of a long time, to the point where they cast him as the animated Batman in that was it called the Tomorrowverse? Is that what we call it? The one with Darren Criss. I actually like Darren Criss as Superman a lot. Nobody really gave him credit for that, but whatever. I didn't love his voice as Batman, but in the animated scene, it is really difficult to compete with someone like Kevin Conroy. And it definitely doesn't help that I grew up watching the Under the Red Hood movie where he voiced Jason, and he's great in that role. People seem to want him to be live action Jason Todd, and I think you forget people age. He's not 22 anymore. I watched way too much Supernatural, so he's always going to be Dean Winchester for me. But of kind of the big popular cast, I wouldn't hate it. So move over Jon Hamm. I'm going to put him over at the top of the B tier. Is that how that works? This is the top, right? This is the top, and this is the bottom. Is that, I don't know actually. Okay, and this brings me to the one that probably the reason you clicked on this video, and that is Brandon Sklenar. Brandon Sklenar has been probably the #1 fan cast I've seen for Bruce Wayne. You ask anybody, you look around for 2 seconds, you see his name all over the place. And I'm sorry, I don't know, I don't really see it. I don't really love it. I'm not just saying this to be a contrarian or to, like, you know, make a YouTube video or anything like that. Like, just because he's popular doesn't mean I don't like him, right? David Corenswet, great example. I loved David Corenswet from the beginning, but I think with Sklenar, again, I got nothing against the guy. I haven't seen him in a ton of things. I saw him in Drop, the Christopher Landon movie, and he was fine in it. He was good. But just, I look at him and I don't really see Batman. I've tried, genuinely, I've tried to see what people see in him. I haven't seen 1923. I think that's where a lot of people are getting this from. But honestly, based on how people have talked about it and what I've seen people say and like how people are petitioning for him, it seems like very physical. It seems like it's all just based on how tall he is, how old he is, and how jacked he is. I don't want to speak for everybody here, obviously, because, you know, some people might like him for different reasons, but a lot of what I've seen, it feels like he's a direct response specifically to people's problems with Robert Pattinson's Batman, with him being not much of a Bruce Wayne and with him not being jacked enough or whatever and all that stuff. And for me, it's like, I don't think that being anti-Robert should be our priority here. And I know I'm speaking as a merge bro. I know that that's not, you know, my opinion doesn't really matter on that front, but like, if we're trying to make a new Batman, why are we letting the last Batman influence it so much, you know? So I definitely wouldn't hate to see him in the DCU, not by any means. I could see him being someone like a Wildcat, which could be fun, or maybe like a Jonah Hex, maybe could be cool. Again, if you like this fan cast, that's totally fine. I'm not shitting on you or anything. I'm not saying you're like a bad fan or anything like that. Just me personally, I don't really see it. A lot of people might get really mad at me for this. I think I'm gonna put him in the C tier. And the next big fan cast that I see a lot is not necessarily as much as Sklenar, but I've been seeing him a lot more, especially more recently, and that's Nate Mann. And he is someone that I actually like a lot more for the role. I'm not super familiar with his work. I haven't really seen him act in anything, at least not to my knowledge, but at least based on like just some pictures that I've seen of him, I see it at least. I see like kind of the intensity there. He's got the facial structure, which is interesting. And in the Superman category, he kind of looks a little bit like David Corenswet. So I think he is probably my favorite of all the big popular fan casts and stuff. And yeah, you know what? Let's make him our first S tier. I think he could really be interesting. Doesn't really hit Pattinson, but you know, I still like him and I wouldn't hate it. And I do like the idea of there being a bit more of an unknown actor for the role. I see the name Ethan Peck get thrown around a lot, who I believe he's Spock on the new Star Trek show. I don't watch that, I'm sorry. But from what I've seen, he seems really good in that show. I'm gonna put him probably between Jon Hamm and Tyler Hoechlin, right smack in the middle of the B tier. Ben Barnes, I see all the time. He was in like Shadow and Bone and stuff. But the thing that I know him best from is Prince Caspian from those Narnia movies. I think I like him more than Ritchson. I don't know if I like him as much as Tyler Hoechlin, so I'm gonna put him between those two. The next unknown cast that I kind of do like is Oliver Jackson Cohen. I mainly know him from the 2020 Invisible Man, directed by Lee Winnell. Oh, Lee Winnell would be fun for Batman. Yeah, throw that in the list. That'd be a fun director for Batman. And he was really good in it. He's not really in it much, because, you know, the premise of the movie, but what he was in was pretty good and stuff. He was actually a lot of people's pick for Moon Knight for a while before Oscar Isaac, and I really did like him for that role, especially given that canonically Batman is half Jewish and so is Cohen. So that's kind of just like an extra little bonus, you know? So honestly, I might throw him up in the A tier. It's either, I can't decide between him and Theo James. I think I'm gonna put them kind of equal. Oh, he was in Haunting of Hill House. I haven't seen that one yet. I don't watch a ton of TV. Like most of my TV time's dedicated to like Doctor Who and shit. But what good is any Batman actor without his Joker? His long love, the character that gives him all definition and is the only thing that makes him interesting, right? At least that's what DC would tell you. I have no like strong feelings about this. And it might be interesting to try to cast, a Batman and Joker at the same time to sort of have like a chemistry going on there. But Joker's not really a priority for me. But it is fun to think about. The name that I always see get thrown around for Joker is Willem Dafoe. I think that's because of everything about him. But I love Willem. I think he could do a great job. It is very much like a typecasting though, to always have him be the little fucking crazy guy, especially after Green Goblin where he basically just played Joker. But it could be fun to have like a sort of older, experienced Joker who like maybe has like a legacy of crime before Batman showed up. I think that could be interesting, So I'm gonna put him in maybe the A tier here, I think. In a similar boat is Bill Skarsgård, who's probably most famous for being Pennywise in the It movies. That feels like typecasting. I'll be honest, like, oh yeah, you wanted to play another clown, maybe even directed by Andy Muschietti again. Oh, really? Really? But he is really good at it. He was really fucking good at it. It is just a little bit too much of a typecasting for me personally, so I'm gonna put him in the B. I wouldn't hate to see someone like Lakeith Stanfield play Joker, maybe taking some inspiration from the 2004 animated The Batman series, where that Joker, voiced by Kevin Michael Ritchson, was just like jumping around and being like extra silly, but still kind of scary and still a little freaky. It's one of those castings that could either be like the best of all time or just kind of okay. So I'm gonna put him in the S tier just cause. Back to the Batman Fancast. One thing that I really do want to see from Batman, in the sea of fancasts of people that are just traditionally handsome guys and like sexy, hot, buff men, I would kind of like to see a Batman who's a little bit weirder. Back in the 80s when Michael Keaton was first cast as Batman, it was kind of a controversial pick. There was a little bit of uproar about it. This was a guy who, for the most part, was mostly known for comedy roles or like just kind of being a little freak in Beetlejuice, which, Burton also directed Beetlejuice. That's probably why. I shouldn't say it another time. I'm done saying it. But despite all of my issues with the Burton Batman movies, and I have quite a few of them, I don't love those movies, I've always thought Michael Keaton was perfect casting, specifically because those movies let him get weird. He's freaky. He's going nuts. And it really emphasized the idea that Batman, at his core, he's a little bit of a freak. He's a guy that dresses up as a bat, goes around fighting crime because he's traumatized by his parents. He lives in a cave. He's sitting around waiting for that bat signal to light up. That was always the best part about the Burton Batman movies. And I would really like to see a Batman casting that is that level of like taking a risk and that level of like generational and focusing on the kind of freak aspect of Batman. I think the perfect Batman actor is also someone that can play Dracula and feel like they live in a cave, still be kind of this mysterious, dark, broody, sexy character, which, I mean, honest, that's why I like Robert Pattinson for the role. Sorry. And so I wouldn't hate seeing someone like Zachary Quinto as Batman. I love him as Spock in the Abrams Star Trek reboot. The second movie's kind of whatever, but Star Trek Beyond, oh my God, I love Star Trek Beyond. Oh my God, I love Star Trek Beyond. Aside from that, his big sort of breakout role was Heroes, where he played Sylar, the serial killer who cut open superpowered people's brains and took their powers for himself. He was so cool. I really wish that show got more than one season. And he's not like perfect for it or anything, but I kind of would like to see his name get thrown around in conversation a little bit more. So I'm gonna put him right in the B tier. And similarly, Bill Skarsgård is a name that I see get thrown around a little bit for a similar reason. I think you could argue that like a good Batman actor should also feel like they could play the Joker in a way, and we've already talked about how Skarsgård gets typecast into that clown role. I don't really love him for Batman, but I do kind of like the conversations and the questions that he brings up. So I'm gonna put him in the C tier. And a name that I really like, and I know it's a little bit weird, but hear me out on this, is David Dastmalchian. That was a name that like, when I first saw somebody suggest it, at first I was like, what the fuck? That's weird. And then I thought about it and I was like, oh. Now, he already played Polka Dot Man in the Suicide Squad. What's the deal with that movie? Is that movie canon? I feel like it's in this nebulous state where it's kind of canon, kind of not, right? I genuinely think that David Dastmalchian is probably one of the best actors in the industry right now, at the very least because of how much work he's put into it. As far back as The Dark Knight, he literally has a podcast where he lays down in a coffin and interviews people. That feels like a very Bruce Wayne thing to do. That feels like a very Batman thing to do. It's definitely much more of an out there choice, but I really think if you give him the chance, he could really bring something interesting in the same way that Michael Keaton brought to the role in the 80s. It's definitely a weirder out there pick. It's not my favorite of any of them, but I do like it. And so I'm gonna put him probably kind of like mid A tier maybe. Also, I'm a little bit biased. I got to meet him. I bumped into him randomly at a comic shop when he was doing a signing, and he is a lovely, lovely person. He's so deeply kind. We talked about Shadow the Hedgehog and like the Sonic movies. I don't know how we got to that conversation, but it was really fun. He's a really nice person. Despite all these other actors who I've listed, some of them who I've liked quite a bit, unfortunately, nobody has come close to Robert Pattinson. Nobody has scratched the itch that I felt when Rob was first cast back in, what was it, like 2019? And have whatever issues you might have with the concept of Emerge, Pattinson is so good in this role. It'd be such a shame to just like throw him out after 2 or 3 movies, you know? And of course, it depends on if he wants to continue doing it. It depends on if he wants to be part of this for another 10 years. But it sounds like he likes it. And at the very least, he likes the money. So I can't blame him there. And the benefit of having one actor playing Batman as opposed to a couple different ones, it's simpler for a general audience to understand. A lot of people like to say that general audiences are smart and they can handle this. I think we're kind of living in a bubble of comic book tube. I was talking to my sister, who she doesn't watch much comic book movies ever, and she watched the new James Gunn Superman, and she texted me and she was like, didn't Superman die in the last one? Why isn't this Henry Cavill anymore? Not everybody gets it. Not everybody's on the same page. But I will not lie, there are quite a lot of downsides of a merge, trying to squeeze in the Reeves universe into the DCU. And so I think I have found a solution that is a little weird, maybe it sounds a little complicated on paper, but does actually solve a lot of these issues. And that's to cast Robert Pattinson as a different Batman. It's a little bit weird, but hear me out. Robert Pattinson is 40. That feels like the perfect age for a Batman who is, sort of later into his career and has a Damian showing up. You can say DCU Batman, Brave and the Bold. If it stars Robert Pattinson with a Bat family, with a more supernatural, fantastical rogues gallery, maybe even a more comic accurate suit. If you say that they're different universes, you say that this is a variant, let's use comic book terms. If you say this is a variant of that version of Bruce, I feel like you can side skirt a lot of the issues that come with a merge while keeping the benefits. And then technically, the events of the Batman aren't canon, or maybe like a variation of them are. Same thing that we're doing with the Suicide Squad and a lot of DCEU movies. And so us little nerds can be like, oh, actually, it's not the same one. Oh, actually, it's a different universe. But like most people are gonna be like, oh, the same guy, cool. Whatever. That sounds weird on paper, but then I honestly think if you just make a movie, I think it weirdly comes back around to being as simple as possible. I don't know, maybe I'm writing copium right now. Maybe I'm crazy. I think that that's my solution that makes me happy personally. I think the reason that I'm so like defensive of Pattinson as Batman, any actor playing Batman, right? I want the best for this character because right now, we have the best for Superman. David Corenswet is so perfect in this role. He is literally Superman in real life. And the way he talks about this character in the source material and interviews, he so clearly loves it. The only character he wants to play more than Superman is like an X-Wing pilot. And I would want the actor for Batman to match that. And the same goes for the director. The same goes for everything involved here. Whether it's David Desmalchian or Nate Mann or even Brandon Sklenar, who I will give a chance. If they can bring me even a fraction of what David brings to Superman, I think we're in for a good time. But what are your fan casts for Batman? Who do you want to see play the Caped Crusader? Do you think I'm crazy for some of these takes? And let me know if you want to see more fan cast videos like this. Talk about the Justice League or Wonder Woman or anything like that. If you like this video, be sure to the like button and subscribe. Special thanks to Wibbly Gold, Arsenic Sauce, Rosa Replay 64, and Johnny Heat for joining Spectacular Fanboys on my channel members. I feel like there are going to be a lot of people dogging on me for this one. This is all just for fun. Don't be like a jerk in the comments, Jesus. This is my Troy Boy 17 coming at you live. Be responsible, stay safe out there, and I'll see you around.